In this last chapter, we're going to talk about client convenience. Obviously, anything you can do to make it easier for clients to schedule appointments and to keep those appointments means that you'll see more clients walking in your door. This is the last chapter in a series where we've talked about the things that you can do to increase veterinary practices. If you haven't looked at the other chapters, we talk about marketing in those, communication of the need for care, managing pricing, and how to become a more cat-friendly practice. When we talk to veterinary practices in the Bayer Veterinary Care Usage Study, one of the things that we asked about was how frequently they schedule the next appointment for clients before they actually walk out the door. And of course, think about what happens in your dental practice. I mean, it's impossible to walk out the door at your dentist without scheduling the next appointment, even though that might be 6 months away. There's no reason we can't do this in our veterinary practices as well, and yet only 4% of practices say they always schedule the next appointment before the client leaves. Another 35% say that they often do that, but the vast majority of practices are not scheduling those appointments, and it's no more difficult in our practices than it is in dental practices. Certainly clients are going to say, well, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 6 months or a year. But we have the same issue at dental practices. But what we can do is get those appointments on the books, and then if the client needs to change them, certainly we'll find another time. But at least having it on the schedule means it's more likely that the client will pay attention to it and bring their pet back in. Another question that we asked had to do with reminders. And what we found is that, no surprise here, 90% of practices use postcard reminders. About half of the practices out there also make phone calls when they're reminding clients about the need for additional services, and about 44% of practices use email. When you look at other forms, things like text messages or publications such as Healthy Pet, very few practices are using those. What has become clear over the last few years is that the way that people want to be communicated with is changing. We've seen the rise in social media, we've seen the rise in smartphones, and people don't necessarily just want to get the postcards that they got in the past. Email is a way that many clients want to be reminded through. You're starting to see an increase in the number of people who want to use or want to receive reminders or other information about their pet through text messages. So we as practices need to adapt to that as well. What we need to be doing now is asking clients what's their preferred means of communication, and then communicating with them in the way that they want to be communicated with, not in the way that's easiest for us. Regardless of what's going on in your practice, whether your visits have been flat, whether they've been increasing, whether they've been declining, there are things that every single practice can do to boost traffic. We've talked about many of these in this series. So things like developing an annual pet health plan, offering monthly billing, asking about other pets, improving your marketing and advertising, so whether that's through Facebook, blogging, expanding your website, teaching cat owners how to train their pet to a carrier, promoting pet insurance, offering payment options. If you just pick one or two of these and start focusing on them, you are going to be able to increase the visits in your practice. And over time, the more of these that you focus on, the more you'll see those visits increase.